So about a month or so ago, as I tend to do, posted 2 back-to-back videos with the respective titles of 7 players who are overrated due to nostalgia and 7 players who are underrated due to recency bias. Not realizing that while a flip side of the former would be near impossible, the latter is a hot topic on both sides. Also, I completely blanked out of ideas for 2 days trying to think of content for the Club World Cup, but sorry man, I just don't care. 7 footballers who are overrated due to recency bias. Let's roll on. Number 7, Mohamed Salah. He isn't better than Premier League Ronaldo, people. He just isn't. Yeah, that's pretty much what this entry is mostly about, cause it's pretty clear that the reasons why people believe Salah has surpassed Ronaldo in the Premier League are very much related to recency bias. 1. People forget or are too young to remember the truth and just go with those who say that Ronaldo only turned up in his final 3 seasons at United. Yeah, bullshit. He also had a world-class domestic campaign in 05-06, and even in his first 2 years, a time where United as a team were going through a transition phase as they had to cut back on their expenses since a part of the Old Trafford Stadium was being worked on. Even there, Ronnie was still one of the 2 standout players in both FA Cup finals they reached, opening the scoring and being the standout player in the one they won. And 2, Salah has got superior stats. Something certain people just like to blindly point to without taking into account. How many times do I have to explain? Do you still not realize how stupid it is to just throw around figures and base your judgment off that? Well, if Twitter is anything to go by, you certainly don't. So let me tell you just how misleading these statistics are. Cause what if I told you that Salah having a higher number of goals and assists than Ronaldo isn't a sign of how good he is or how bad Ronaldo was, but rather it's a sign of the times. Cause simply put, it is categorically easier to score nowadays in Salah's era than it was during Ronaldo's initial spell at Manchester United. Don't believe me? Well, here's a random example. Well, in the 6 years Ronaldo spent at Old Trafford in the mid-2000s, Manchester United averaged just over 70 goals per season. Now, this average back then was not only enough for them to win 3 back-to-back league titles, but finish as the top scoring team in the league, also on 3 occasions. On the other hand, in Salah's first 6 years at Liverpool from 2017 to 2023, his side scored exactly 80 league goals per season, almost 10 more than that great United side. And still, guess what? Not only did they win just 1 out of the possible 6 league titles, they finished as the top scoring team in the league a grand total of 0 times. And you know what? Just think about that. Where an average of 70 goals per season across 6 seasons was good enough for you to swipe up half of those titles 16 years ago, these days 80 per season is barely good enough to win 1. Like hell, the Liverpool team that finished 5th last season still managed to score 7 more goals than the United team who won the fucking league in 2009. I mean, if that's not a sign of the times, I don't know what is. And the specific reasons behind this is pretty straightforward. Football now favours attackers more so than it did at any time in recent history. Be it the evolution of tactics, changing of the rules, or even improvement in playing conditions. Cause you know it's no coincidence that practically all goal scoring records are being broken now. And again, it's less to do with how good a specific individual is and more to do with where the entire game is going. Like, ask yourself honestly, you really think Neymar is a better goal scorer than R9? Or Giroud is a better goal scorer than Henry? Be serious, will ya? And yes, similarly, stop directly comparing Salah and Ronaldo's Premier League numbers. And by the way, that's not just because of everything I just said, but also let's not forget, while they both on paper played on the right, their roles were completely different. Salah is a left-footed inverted winger who's tasked to either cut in and shoot or run beyond the false 9 when Bobby Firmino was there. In contrast, Ronaldo was a right-footed wide midfielder whose job was to almost exclusively isolate a fullback, get on the outside and knock the ball across. Now you fucking tell me, how are you more likely to get more goals and assists? By cutting inside, getting involved in the link-up play, overloading the middle while your fullbacks provide the width, or going out wide yourself, crossing the ball and inshallah Van Nistelrooy is in there somewhere. It's a wonder why football moved on from those tactics. Yep, managed to fit that clip in yet another video. And for good reason, considering I'm still getting shit like this. And by the way, please remember, the reason why this entry is at the bottom of the list is because, well, apart from the whole being better than Ronaldo bullshit, Salah for me is nowhere near being overrated in any other way. He's easily one of the Premier League's greatest ever, and is still amongst the best players in the world today. But you know who might not be? Yet. Number 6, Lamine Yamal. If I'm honest, all that really needs to be said for this entry is 4 words. Calm the fuck down. But given that I am, attempting to adjust to the IQ levels of those who watch this, I shall elaborate. Look, facts are, this kid is the best 18-year-old we've seen in a while. Hell, he was probably the best 17-year-old that I've seen since I began watching football. But he isn't and hasn't been the best player in the world at any time in his career. When Lamine Yamal puts in a brilliant performance, it's mostly due to his confidence being sky high. Why? Because all he's doing is playing by instincts, and the more confident he is, the more all this will come off, and vice versa. But here's the issue, people. If there is a top level fullback who's about to come up against him who steps back, analyzes and prepares specifically for Yamal, it honestly wouldn't be that hard to contain him. Case in point, Nuno Mendes in the Nations League final. Cause again, for comparatively experienced top level pros like Mendes, Yamal's game isn't all that complicated. How Lamine bounces back from those issues once most fullbacks have figured him out will truly determine if he is amongst the world's best. But as of now, he hasn't done that yet, and therefore he isn't there yet. Wanna know why? Cause he's 18 years old. Hence, calm the fuck down. Number 5, Kevin De Bruyne. And we move on to a string of entries after which I'm pretty sure my label was switched from being a Liverpool hater to a Man City hater, along with being a Brazil hater, I think. Who gives a shit? You lot are morons anyway. But yeah, back to Mr. Malnourished Brock Lesnar. Look, let's be real. It's hard not to look at KDB numbers and just not be wild and automatically put him amongst, if not atop, all the midfield greats of the past. Not taking into account that, 1, he spent pretty much his entire Premier League career with Man City, a team who again pretty much always dominate possession, and therefore any one of their regular players are much more likely to dominate the stats. And 2, on top of playing for a possession dominant team, he is also playing in an era where practically every top half team is scoring more goals, creating more chances, dominating the ball and etc. So inevitably, he was always more likely to have a higher number of assists than the midfield maestros of the past who graced these shores. And in case you're having trouble understanding why you shouldn't compare stats of 2 players from different eras, here's a clip that thoroughly explains why you should. But of course, stats aren't the only reason why KDB is rated so high. He also passes the eye test, and yeah, the dude can pass it around, can't he? But again, team, again, era. He plays in a team that is set up by a football nutbag who details pretty much every single move to the inch, and as Vincent Kompany said, you give KDB a plan, he's the best in the world. But would he have been anywhere near the best in the world in any of the top Premier League teams of, let's say, 20 years ago, where there was nowhere near that amount of meticulous planning, nor did any of the teams keep hold of the ball as much as Pep City, and the game was a lot less technical and a lot more physical? Well, the answer to that is probably yes. A great player will find a way to adapt to his surroundings. But would he have racked up the numbers he did in this era and thus get such regular shouts of surpassing Gerrard, Lampard, Keane, Vieira and all them, man? Not a f***ing chance. Number 4, Rodri. Right, so you all know this brother from Rio's Vibe with 5 channel, right? Seems like a good dude. And while he's probably my favorite character on the show, I think it's safe to say that his ball knowledge at times is questionable at best. And look, for full disclosure, I barely do much research anyway, but this week, I basically did nothing. So I may be remembering this wrong, but if my memory does serve me right, I believe bro argued with Rio that Rodri is better than Prime Busquets. What are we doing, man? And look, to be fair to him, none of his individual arguments were outrageous or anything, but I do think these men were confusing best with more complete. Cause yes, Rodri is quicker than Busquets, Rodri is stronger than Busquets, Rodri covers more ground, Rodri scores more goals, etc. But as anyone who followed Prime Busquets closely would know, that was not the point of Prime Busquets. The guy was a part of Barca teams that didn't require crazy physicality. They needed someone who'd calmly collect the ball from the back four, keep hold of it regardless of how strong the opposing press is, and eventually initiate an attack. And again, when it comes to each player doing the job they were given Busquets' quality, longevity and levels of success for both Spain and Barca, putting Rodri above him is nothing but recency bias for me. And by the way, this is coming from someone who doesn't even like Busquets. He's a twat. And if you ask who I prefer, 100% is Rodri, man. He's a workhorse who seems to specialize in producing big moments in big games. But I am trying to be as objective as I can. And as someone who only even saw Busquets live in a stadium when he was far past his prime, I can honestly say that even then you don't truly grasp how crucial this shaggy shaped and shameless shithouse but a sharp and unshakable shield for his backline is until you see it in the flesh. Number 3, Phil Foden. Another Man City midfielder overrated due to him thriving in areas where the game has basically shifted to. Again, yes, that makes him good, but again, no, that does not make him better than any of the top level midfielders from the past. But you see, there are two main reasons why this newly public, frustrated lesbian single mom lookalike is placed higher on here than his Man City teammates. Firstly, well, obviously he's not on Kevin's level, so it's easier to overrate him. And secondly, the overrating Foden process is then made even easier by solely comparing him to English footballers from the past who played in a similar position to him. Why does that make the overrating process easier? Because facts are, an English footballer from back in the day having even a third of Foden's technical ability is super rare. And as a result, yeah man, I've heard some mad shit about him being compared to or better than people like Beckham and Scholes. Get fucking serious. These guys played a different game. These guys weren't required to be as technical as Phil. And to be honest, if they tried to play like Phil back then, they'd struggle to even get into a top team. Different game. So, as we always bring it back to the ultimate way of judging the levels of a footballer, how well have they performed the duties assigned to them by their coaches, for how long, and how much success have they achieved as a result? Result, Foden is good, but there were many that were better. Number 2, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Another EPL great who I myself am guilty of overrating in the past, putting him in my all-time Premier League 11. Flipping hell, that video sure does get a fuck ton of mentions for something no motherfucker watched, and sounds like I recorded it via a fucking walkie-talkie. Check it out by the way, it's great. But yes, as I said, I, an otherwise perfect specimen of an individual, am once again guilty of overrating a player due to reasons related to recency bias. And basically, how the genuine f*** did I think Trent had already eclipsed Gary Neville back in 2021? Like now surely I didn't believe that. Boy. Yeah, talk about recency bias. Like, yes, don't worry, I know I wasn't the only one. And yes, I also know that there are people even today that would argue Trent is the greatest right back in Premier League history. And that's because, much like, but even more so than Phil Foden, we've never even come close to seeing a right back being as technically gifted as this guy. So instead of realizing that defenders being more technically gifted is just where the game is going and doesn't necessarily make the players of today better than those of yesterday, we instead let the recency bias kick in and crown Trent as the greatest right back in Premier League history. But then I, much like a few of you should, I was gonna say a few of Scousers should, but probably not anymore, stopped at my tracks and saw what was actually going on, and in turn saw sense. It's hard not to get carried away by an English right back with such amazing technique in passing, being the best crosser of the ball in the world over a few years, and produce a handful of moments that were ideal for highlight reels on YouTube and Twitter. And I, like many others, genuinely thought that he'd excel in central midfield. Eventually though, there were two main factors that really opened my eyes on Trent. Number one, when he did have a run of games in central midfield, particularly for England, you not only realize just how little his understanding of the position really is, but in addition just how much he struggled to pull off those amazing passes when he didn't have the time on the ball in midfield that he did when he was operating at fullback. And number two, after seeing clips of him wandering out of position, being rinsed time in time out, and just in general being a defensive liability, man, that really did make me rethink my choices. And look, I'm not saying Trent isn't a very good player. In fact, personally, he is still my favorite English right back. But as far as being great, well, he does have plenty of time to reach that level considering he's still only in his mid-20s. I just don't think he's there yet. Number one, that fucking keeper from the World Cup. He was on the books of Arsenal for a decade, was being tossed around by Arsenal for nearly a decade, moved to Aston Villa in the beginning of this decade, floundered around in the mid-table for almost half a decade, and then suddenly, 1. Argentina win a very questionable World Cup, and 2. Aston Villa build a very solid team from the ground up. And now he's thought of as one of the best keepers in the world? You man seriously can't be real people. Look, I'll tell you now, he was probably Argentina's most important player at that World Cup, but that is all. Because while he is doing fine, Villa's resurgence in the European scene has very little to do with him, and he is still erratic, still error prone, still very much a mid-table level goalkeeper, and therefore still very much a long way away from being a world level goalkeeper. He's also a bellend. And that is that. Agree or disagree beats indifference. So what do you think of this list? Are there any other players overrated due to recency bias who might have missed out? Let me know in the comments below. And as usual, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Till next time, you keep rolling.